All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the postseason pod.
Joking. Not another one?
Sort of at the close to the Christmas break of the NHL season. But we're gonna start a little new series here. We're just gonna sort of grade and assess where teams are in their rebuilds. I believe I would say there's probably seven or so teams that are in a fully committed rebuild. Some that are still in one that they probably shouldn't be in. So we're going to touch on all these teams that are, bottom dwellers of the league and have been for the past few years. It's pretty split up evenly between the Eastern and the Western Conference. A few teams from each conference. So I'm excited to get to, talk to you guys about that and sort of assess what we think of teams' positions and what their futures look like, and if we believe in the rebuild, if we don't, if we sort of do, but we need this one more thing until we're really truly set in stone on believing in this group moving forward. So first episode, I'm going to talk about my Chicago Blackhawks. Just kick it off with a team that I know a lot about, have perceptions and feelings towards, and just like to sort of inform, but also create a conversation about, what to expect from them in in the next 50 games of the year, and moving forward in subsequent years. So we're going to dive right into it. We're going to touch on, U23 cores of all these teams, a few stats about their team, and a few player stats, and what we think about how they've been doing this year and over the past few years in the draft, and so on and so forth. So um, I'm gonna date back to, the end of the Kane and Tays era. That's sort of when they declared, hey, full rebuild. Tays had to leave due to COVID. Never really got back to playing. Kane, they obviously traded in the 2020 end of the 2021 season. And so that was sort of the benchmark of when their rebuild started, excuse me. And yeah, we're going to start off then. Um, it commenced at that deadline of the 2022 calendar year. They traded away Kane. They traded away Brendan Hagel for. They were kind of pigeonholed with Kane. I believe they only got a fourth round pick. And then Hagel, they got two firsts and two seconds, which was a steal, and two players, or two firsts and two players, or two firsts and a second and two players. And that was a good trade, but sort of missing him now, unfortunately, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. And some of their moves that they decided to not take part in that maybe are biting them in the rear now. So yeah, they over that 2022 summer, they sort of committed, and they had two first round picks that year. They went with Kevin Korchinski, 7th overall, and Frank Nazar, 13th overall. We'll talk about those few players a little bit later. And then that season, they were terrible. Third worst team in the league. Didn't really have anybody to, look forward to or be excited about, or, whatever. It was a tough season. And then that following summer, or spring, I guess, the draft lottery of 2023 is when the rebuild sort of fully started, right? They were able to bring home the number one overall pick in the 2023 draft, which was obviously a generational talent in Connor Bedard. And hopefully he continues to prove that he's a next level superstar and franchise player. So I'm looking forward to, what he has to bring. Also later in that first round, they went with Oliver Moore out of then the NTDP, but now he's at University of Minnesota, and we'll touch on all these guys that they've have in their system drafted in previous years, and all the way up to this last 2024 draft when they took Lev Schnaub and then Boisvert and Vanacker later in the first round. Lev Schnaub, obviously, second overall pick. But to touch on the team as a whole this year, in the first 26 games, they went 8-16-2. That was obviously under head coach Luke Richardson, and he was obviously relieved of his duties about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I mean, he was brought in. This was his third season. He was brought in to just sort of be the middleman, if you will. I never really saw him as the guy that would have taken us through the rebuild, and then on the flip side of it, when we were, competitive, I just saw him as sort of a holdover. So I didn't really have any expectations of him. I think he did well. I think he praised a little bit of defensive style of game, which works for some teams. But I think with a team of this nature, their fans want something exciting. They don't want their players to just, sit back, relax, and, try to win games 1-0. Like, you want to see your young players play offense, not get stuck in the D zone the whole game. So I think that's what ultimately led to his downfall. He was a great guy, had a great rapport with the players and the organization and the whole NHL as a whole. I mean, the guy played 1,400 games in the NHL, so nothing but good things to say about him. But, the roster that we presented him with was borderline AHL roster some nights. So, yeah. And then we recently hired as an interim, not Marcus, Anders Sorensen, first NHL head coach that's of Swedish descent, which, kudos to him. It's kind of surprised me when I heard that nobody from Sweden had been a head coach before, but maybe he can pave the way for some future guys in the Swedish ranks of coaching to sort of come over. Since then, we've been 2-3. It's whatever. We're 400 points percentage, which is over our average right now. I think it's like 373 points percentage that we have. We're averaging 2.8 goals for per game since he's taken over, and we've averaged 3.4 goals against per game since he's taken over. More notably, he switched us from the 2-1-2 or to the 2-1-2 forecheck rather than the 1-1-2 that 1-2-2, sorry, not 1-1-2. That Luke Richardson was running. I could sense it. I was at the game yesterday. We seem to be, hounding pucks more on the forecheck and just sort of getting in there and, trying to play with offense. Our D are jumping up in the rush, which is great. I love to see that. One thing I'd like to see a little bit more, I was disgusted by, not disgusted, that's a little bit of a harsh term, but I was just like confused about the frequency of dumping the puck in from both teams yesterday. The Hawks played the Islanders in the matinee, and I was sort of like, why are we dumping the puck in so much? Like, try to, I mean, obviously you don't want to turn over at the blue line, and if you're tired, get the red, get it. And I understand that, the fundamentals of the game, but just try to make a play, right? Like, young guys, fast guys, skilled guys, like, just try to make a play, get a shot on net. There were a few instances that I liked, but overall, I would like to get some more shots off the rush as a team, talking about the present time. We're 10-19-2 as a result of those two coaches' records. 31st in the league. I sort of expected another appalling year, I guess you could say. Management didn't think so, but yeah, I sort of knew that this wasn't what we needed, especially with the UFAs that we grabbed. There was a little bit of false hope, I think, and we'll touch on those signings later. So yeah, but more on the team stuff. A stat that I saw today, as a team, we allow 29.97 shots against per game, which is good for 7th in the NHL. I thought that was pretty good. Something that teams can pride themselves on is the fact that, the less shots they give up, hopefully the less goals they give up. Obviously, if you're giving up 20 high danger shots a night, it's probably not the best, and that stat doesn't really mean anything. So take something like that with a grain of salt. I'd say on average, the Blackhawks probably give up 8 to 13, 7 to 11, that range of high danger shots against, which, I don't think it's terrible for a young and up and coming team, rebuilding team. But yeah, I think it's also aided by another stat that I'm going to touch on right now, which is our penalty kill. Our penalty kill is 84.4%. That's good for 4th in the league. But since November 1st, I believe we're clicking at 88% on the penalty kill. I believe we've killed 21 straight penalties. So, the fact that teams aren't able to score on us on the PK is sort of aiding the shots against per game stats. So maybe those two goes hand in hand, but two great stats. More on special teams. Our power play is clicking at 23.8%, which is good for 11th in the league. I think that's, a pretty good margin. I think back to, when we were winning Stanley Cups in 2013 or 2010, 13, 15, that stretch of, 6 to 8 years that we were really dominant we never really had that upper echelon power play, I don't think, but we were able to score when we needed it to. And I think that's a resemblance that I see with this current team right now. We don't always score. We have some games where we go 0 for 4 on the power play and it looks ugly. But ultimately, when it's time to bear down and put the puck in the net, we usually find a way to get a lot of chances and build momentum if we don't ultimately put the puck in the net. Uh, there was an instance like that yesterday. Um, we just sort of capitalized on a 5-on-3 opportunity that was given to us in a tie game scenario, and we were able to take the lead heading into the third. So something like that, score when it matters is pretty beneficial for a team like that. So those are pretty much like the overarching team stats. You might say top 5 in one special team stat and basically top 10 in the other. Why aren't the you know results showing up in the win-loss column? But I think it's just the fact that like our team is not good. Like our players aren't good. 5-on-5, we're not, you know, we've started to get more collective as a unit and play together. But yeah, I think it's just a lack of talent, if we're being honest. Moving along, I'm going to highlight some current player individual stats from this season. Our goal leader is Ryan Donato at 10. Second is Bertuzzi at 8. And then we have Teuvo Teravainen, Hull, and then Bedard at 7 apiece. It's okay. Donato having 10 goals is a bit of a fluke, excuse me. Probably has won us some games, unfortunately. But yeah, you would like to see Bedard have more than 7 goals. I really hope he shoots the puck more. I think he needs to get off a line with Donato. I think that when they play with each other, Donato shoots the puck too much. I want Bedard to take the shots that Donato does. But, what do I know, right? In the assist column, Bedard, 19. Alex Vlasic, 14. We'll talk about him in a little bit. And then Connor Murphy, 10. Good numbers. Glad Vlasic's up there. And then points as a whole, Bedard, 26 points, leading the league. Not leading the league, not even close to leading the league. Leading the team, Donato, 17, Vlasic, and Teravainen, each at 16 apiece. So, um, you know, it's been a very suppressed offense this year. Not a lot of high scoring games, high scoring fairs, top point nights, but I think that might start to shift. I think, scoring 5 goals last night was great, or not last night, yesterday afternoon in a matinee. We scored 4 in New York, I believe, against the Rangers. Or no, 4 against the Islanders, 2 in New York against the Rangers, and then 2 and then 1 respectively in the other 2 games under Sorensen. So obviously that's good for 2.8 goals per game, like I mentioned previous. But yeah, I'd like to see offense shoot up a little bit. I don't care if our defensive output, dwindles because of that. I'd rather lose the game 7-6 than 3-0. So hoping for a little bit more offense. Bedard, one of those guys that you count on to bring offense. But yeah, he's sort of picking it up as of late, and we'll talk about that as we go through the U23 core. And he's obviously the number 1 guy on the list. Franchise center, drafted first overall 2023 draft, 61 points in 68 games, Calder Memorial Trophy winner. Sidelined 14 games with a broken jaw, but came back, looked really good, arguably better than he did prior to the injury. Fans were hoping for, I think the league as well, we're hoping for a big second season from him. And to be quite frank, it wasn't really there following the first, 5 or so games of the year. Through 5 games, I think he had 7 points or 8 points. And then the next 15 games, he basically didn't really do anything. 12-goal game drought during that stretch of games. He even came out and said he didn't really feel like he was doing anything. But over his last 10 games, he has 11 points, 7 points in 5 games since the new head coach took over. Unfortunately, I sort of pick up on this as someone who, is an avid hockey lover and, dives deep into, how guys are playing. I think a lot of his points come from the power play, unfortunately. I think it's such a benefit when teams are able to have star players who can produce at 5-on-5 and be dangerous at all areas of the ice. I'd like to see his 5-on-5 outputs produce. However, the guys he's playing with at 5-on-5 are terrible. So just a disclaimer. I think it's, yesterday, or not yesterday, 2 days ago, Saturday, they were in New Jersey. He created a lot of chances 5-on-5, had a great pass to Khrushchev in New York on the island on Thursday. Khrushchev just like didn't even get a shot off in a high danger area. So I think, once he gets surrounded with some better players, which they tried to address this offseason, but we'll touch on that later. So yeah, but I think it's going well. He's played well as of late. Seems more engaged since the new coach took over. I hope that's not placebo. And hopefully he can get back on the train soon. Next, we're going to go with Frank Nazar. And this is in no particular order. I'm just, he's had a great year in the AHL thus far, 24 points in 24 games. Last season, got a stint with 3 games, scored on his first shot ever in the NHL. He reminds me a little bit of Braden Point. I don't think he'll ever score even close to 50 goals in the NHL, but just sort of plays like the style of Braden Point. Good two-way guy, willing to kill penalties. They haven't played him on the PK as much this year. They played him on the PK last year in his 3 games. He came up 2 games ago. He's played 2 games. He has 0 points. Has had a few chances. I liked his game yesterday when I was in the crowd watching him. Good pace. Willing to go into the corners and battle. In New Jersey on the Saturday previous of yesterday's game, he had a great chance that, I think Markstrom just like stuck his leg out and got his toe on it. So yeah, he's been playing really well. He's been a force in the AHL. I'm not sure how long he'll stay up. Maybe for the rest of the year, that would be great. But if not, looking forward to seeing him still progress as the year goes on. Next guy, Bedard's draft year again. Oliver Moore, 17 points in 20 games at the University of Minnesota. Last year in his freshman campaign, I believe he had 33 points in 35 games. So, was looking for, a little bit of a step up from him. He sort of dried out or started dry at the start of the year, but has sort of picked it up as of late. He's really fast, Dylan Larkin-esque sort of player. He's listed as a center. Not sure if he'll play center at the next level. But yeah, his speed is very intriguing. His playmaking ability is very intriguing. And I think if he can, match the pace of his hands with his feet, and sort of tie that all in together with his hockey IQ, which I know they're working on because they've said it publicly, with the Hawks development staff. But yeah, looking forward to seeing what he may bring to the AHL level next season, hopefully. Moving on, another guy started out his career pretty well. Second year in the league, he sort of played most of it in the AHL, then was brought up for about 15 game stint. He was awesome. Lucas Reichel, and then the next subsequent 2 years, he was terrible. And then this year, he's shown flashes, 3 goals, 6 points, 9 games, and 31 games. Has played fourth line minutes pretty much the entire year, minus maybe like 5 games. I'm not really sure what his ceiling is in the NHL. He's really quick, has good hands. I think he can sort of be a, top 6 impact player. But I hope they just don't shelter him so much that, his sort of skill and pace goes to waste. Next, we have Sasha Boisvert, 2024 first round draft pick, 20th overall, I believe. He's at University of North Dakota, 6'3", like 200 pounds, such a unit. Not afraid to get in the dirty areas, has a rocket of a shot. A little bit more of a two-way guy, with still a lot of high offensive upside. So hopefully he can, I haven't, maybe second line center in the NHL, maybe. But yeah, that's a big issue with a lot of the Blackhawks prospects, which I'll touch on in a minute. But yeah, next guy, this guy is pretty lethal out there. Nick Lardis, Brampton Bulldogs, OHL, 28 goals, 22 assists, 50 points, 30 games. No doubt that this kid knows how to put the puck in the net. Smaller frame, but goal scoring is something you can't really teach. So Maybe he becomes, third line scoring forward again. Big theme with the Blackhawks. Prospects. Next, we're going to go Roman Kanserov, 13 points in 15 KHL games this year. I believe he was runner-up or he won KHL Rookie of the Year in the playoffs last year. His team won the KHL and he was really good. So yeah, excited about what he might be able to bring. Um, Another guy I'm going to touch on, Aiden Thompson. Him and Jack Devine over at Denver were leading the nation in points. I think it's a little bit different now, but Aiden Thompson's got 11 goals, 13 assists, 24 points in 18 games. I've watched Denver a few times. He's pretty dynamic out there. Haven't really seen him play against, pro competition because, as NCAA players, they're not allowed to take part in training camp, and the Blackhawks rookie camp is not on the ice. So, sort of undercover gem potentially, hopefully. We'll see. I guess I'm not really sure. And then the next guy I want to touch on is Colton Dock, obviously brother of Kirby Dock, former Blackhawks third overall pick in 2019. He's been really good. He has 19 points in 24 AHL games. A lot of people close to the organization, uh, not really close, but who study and operate within the organization and on the daily want him to be called up. I think he'd be a great just sort of driving force on a line. Kind of reminds me of like a I don't want to say Chris Kreider because that's a real high pedestal, and I'm not sure how good in front of the net he might be at the NHL level. But just sort of that, power forward guy. Not the most skilled, might not be the power forward superstar like Rantanen. Well, he definitely won't be Rantanen. I can probably put my life on that. But if he does, I hope he proves me wrong, because that would be a big help for our team. But yeah, I think just sort of that power forward. Maybe match what Will Cooley's doing in New York right now as a young power forward in the league. So yeah, those are some of the forwards that are really, might be impactful. Another few guys in the in the AHL, in the OHL that have been pretty good. Alex Ferrand and Merrick Van Acker. But yeah, we'll see. The theme that I mentioned earlier is the fact that we don't have a lot of surefire top six players in our prospect pool. Um, and that's something I hope we address in the coming draft. And obviously, I guess you can't really measure out potential right away. So we'll see what happens. On the defensive end, Alex Vlasic, he might have to get some recognition as one of the better contracts in the league. Young guy, signed 6 years, 4.6 million, 16 points in 31 games. And with Seth Jones out at the moment, he's really solidified himself as, a number one sort of two-way, more defensive defenseman. He's been really good. Ethan Del Mastro has been really good. He was an AHL All-Star last year. I think he was sort of overshadowed by the top D that the Hawks brought in this year to the AHL program. So yeah, maybe he becomes like a third pair guy on a high playoff team. I have no idea. Kevin Korchinski, he was drafted 7th overall in the same draft that Frank Nazar was drafted in 2022. So yeah, he had 11 points in 21 AHL or 24 AHL games. I'm sorry, or no, 21 AHL games. And then he was called up. He's played the four games in the NHL. He's been really good. A real step up from last year. Last year, I believe he played 78 games in the NHL, and he was pretty brutal. But this year he seems confident with the puck. He had a lot of good line rushes yesterday in the game. Just seems more confident with the puck and willing to make plays. And I think for a young defenseman who was brought in to be an offensive defenseman, that's sort of, something you got to fight with, and got to trust yourself that you're willing to make plays. Excuse me. And then next we have Artyom Levshinov, the Artie Party, 9 points in 21 AHL games. He was injured to start the year, broke his foot over the summer. Obviously, drafted second overall in this year's draft. I don't know how I feel about him. Last night, I don't know if it was a record, but he had 9 shots on goal in the Rockford game, which is just insane. That's a ton of shots on goal. So I guess I'm pretty sure his ability to get the puck to the net is pretty prevalent. I've watched him a few times, and his effort it's like it's not there. And people say it's his skating stride. It's very just like smooth, so it doesn't look like he's trying. But I don't know. I've seen him make some few mistakes, and it's like, no, well, like hopefully my D partner's back there. So I don't know if he'll ever be good at the NHL level. I really have no idea. I'm not high on him. But yeah, hopefully the team and the development staff see something that I don't, because it would be a waste of a pick if it wasn't. Wyatt Kaiser, he's been decent, made a bad play in the New Jersey game on Saturday that cost him the following game yesterday. I'm not high on him. Other people are. I like how involved in the rush he is when he is in the lineup. So we'll see. Louis Crevier, he drew back in the lineup. 6'8" defenseman. Tyler Myers-esque potentially. He blocked a few shots yesterday. Seemed really engaged. Would like to see a little bit more patience with the puck from him. But as a 6'8" defenseman, you're not really hoping for the softest of hands or the quickest decision making with the puck in the right spot. So, and then Nolan Allen, he's played the majority of the year in the NHL. He's sort of not talked about, which is good for a young defenseman, right? Doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Looks like he's willing to eat some minutes. Is a proven winner, won the WHL along with Korchinski and then Colton Dock in with the Seattle Thunderbirds last year. So sort of a guy who's further down the progression path, which I like. He was a former first round draft pick, 32nd overall. So yeah, I've liked his games thus far. I haven't really zoned in on it. But yeah, I think he'll be, an impact bottom four guy, maybe second pair guy with, maybe a Levshinov, sort of just be that guy that stays back and doesn't really get the credit for a guy who maybe might be more potent offensively. But yeah, I've enjoyed him thus far. And then last guy I want to touch on, another University of Minnesota Golden Gopher, is Sam Renzel. First round draft pick in 2022, I believe. 25th overall. 8 goals, 12 points, 28 goals, 12 assists, 20 points in 20 games on the blue line of the Golden Gophers. I've only watched highlights of the Golden Gophers this year, just to, touch up on Renzel and more and see how they're doing. But he looks pretty dynamic on the blue line. So we'll see. Good skater, big frame. So we'll see what he does in the near future. So I would expect maybe Moore, Thompson, and Renzel, and then Ryan Green, who I didn't really touch on, but he's on this list to sign following their NCAA seasons, just to maybe get a few games with the Rockford Ice Hogs or the Chicago Blackhawks. So yeah, excited for that. Excited for the youth movement. And then final thing I want to touch on is the leadership group or the management group. Kyle Davidson, obviously the GM, Norm McIver, assistant GM. Yeah, Kyle, he was brought in following the Stan Bowman saga in 2022, I believe, or 2021. Yeah, I think he's done an okay job. I think he's hyper focused on this certain type of player they like to draft. Like when I look at this list, I see a lot of players that do a lot of the same things. Um, so I'm not really sure what his drafting philosophy is. Um, they seem to be afraid to take risks in the draft, um, which I don't like. There was rumors that they tried to trade for the 4th overall pick this year with Columbus to get Demidov after they selected Levshinov. I would have loved that move. I think Demidov's great. Um, you know, top line forward in the future, and that's something we desperately need. So yeah, and then the UFA signings he's made have been less than ideal.
You're just ruining it. Look at my lips. You're ruining it. Ruining it.
Last year they brought in Nick Foligno, Taylor Hall, Corey Perry. Hall tore his ACL. Foligno, good player, is now our captain. And then Corey Perry had to get his contract terminated. So maybe give that offseason like a
C. This offseason brought in Bertuzzi, Brossois, Martinez, Brody, Teravainen, and they just sort of have been Brossois and Martinez have been injury ridden. Bertuzzi and Turbo have sort of picked it up as of late. Hall just seems like he's lost a step a little bit some games. Obviously, that was following an ACL injury, so I guess you can understand where that's coming from. Brody is terrible. He looks too slow. But yeah, I think if there's one thing you can critique is the offseason signings. I think they thought that Bertuzzi and Teravainen were going to be like some top line guys that were going to really assist Bedard and, um, push his performance to another level. But they just have never been that. They never will be that. So yeah, I think in this year's draft they need to go after Porter Martone. This guy is electric, big frame, plays on the wing. Him and Bedard together may be a scary duo in the future. He's over 2 points per game in the OHL this year, I believe, for the Brantford Steelheads, not the Mississauga Steelheads. So yeah, I think that should be. I think we need to sort of take risks in the draft. You heard it a few last draft. Barry Trotz told the scouting department, "Go get me guys that can take people out of their seats. I can get the guys that throw the puck off the glass out of the D zone and into the neutral zone." So I think they need to adopt that philosophy. They need to go get guys who are potentially game changers and showstoppers. Because we don't have that guy right now. We have Bedard, who's not really a prospect anymore. And besides that, I see 0 first liners in our prospect pool. I hope these guys prove me wrong. But yeah, that's my take on it. I think we're solid on D-men, and obviously you can build through the free agency in the coming years. But how often is high octane first line guy going to be in free agency? Maybe we see Mitch Marner this year, but I don't think he's going anywhere. Maybe Rantanen, but is Rantanen worth 14 million to us? I'm not really sure this early in our steady incline of performance. I don't think so. So yeah, we'll see. And then goalies real quick, U23, Adam Guyon, Drew Commesso. Drew Commesso played his first career NHL game Saturday in New Jersey. Through the first 2 periods, he was 17 for 17, made some really good saves. Was left out to dry in the third period, gave up 3 in 2.5 minutes. None of them were really his fault. Was really impressed with how he played. In the AHL, his numbers aren't very good, but it doesn't really matter once you get to the NHL. If you can play, you can play. Adam Guyon, obviously, notably stole the show for Slovakia in the World Juniors the Bedard year. And yeah, I partly think they drafted him due to his performance against Canada in that game, which, rightly so. He was unbelievable. But at University of Minnesota Duluth this year, he hasn't been good. I believe it's like 3.5 goals against per game and then like an 878 save percentage. So, yeah, I'm not really sure what their plan is at the goaltender position. They didn't draft one last draft, and they said that was because they like some guys in this draft. So maybe they go after somebody in the first 2 rounds, first 3 rounds or so. So yeah, and then I want to touch on one more guy, Seth Jones. He's obviously on the injured reserve right now. He's missed 14 games with a broken foot. He's making 9.25 for the next 6 years until 2030 when he's a UFA. He has 2 goals, 8 points in 10 games. 2 goals, 8 assists, 10 points in 17 games. Which for a $9.5 million defenseman is not very good. But he's a little overhated. And has publicly said that he really wouldn't have signed with the Blackhawks if he knew they were going in this direction, which I guess take that with a grain of salt or interpret that how you will. So yeah, I mean, am I excited he's on my team? I don't really think so, but is he really that unbearable that I can't fathom the fact that we have this guy on our team? No, not really, I guess. But yeah, he's just sort of a non-factor for me. Some nights he's brutal, some nights he's better. But yeah. And then final verdict, do I believe in this rebuild? As of right now, I'm going to say no.
What?
I think we hold some guys to a higher echelon than they are. I think we need more star power. I think we need more patience, as much as it sucks. Um, we're not even on television right now. So, or if you don't have direct TV, you're not watching the Blackhawks on television. So, um, yeah, I mean, you're not missing a lot. It's a lot of bad hockey. It's a lot of redundant hockey. But hopefully in the years to come, we'll see some, brighter futures from these guys. Some guys establish themselves as franchise players and league faces of the league. So yeah, I would say right now I'm not on board with this rebuild as it currently stands, but with the move of one draft pick or one trade or one signing, it can flip. So glad I was able to inform, but also create some discussion about what people feel about the Blackhawks rebuild. Um, so yeah, thanks everybody for watching, and hope you enjoyed the video.